During a heartfelt speech, Ibrahim Traoré spoke powerful words about Jesus that no one expected. His message touched hearts deeply, and even Hollywood legend Mel Gibson, known for his passion for faith, couldn't hold back his tears. This unforgettable moment of raw honesty and faith has sparked global conversations about belief, strength, and humility. The conference hall in Ouagadougou was packed. Cameras flashed. Journalists whispered, and leaders from different parts of the world waited for Ibrahim Traoré to take the stage. But what caught everyone's attention was the quiet figure seated in the second row. Mel Gibson, the Hollywood legend, famous for his faith and the movie The Passion of the Christ, had come to witness the young Burkinabe president speak. No one knew why exactly Mel had chosen this event. Some said curiosity. Others whispered it was destiny. The room carried a strange silence, as though everyone felt something bigger than politics was about to unfold. When Traoré walked in, the crowd rose to its feet. His presence was simple. No fancy suit, no exaggerated gestures, just a man with conviction in his eyes. He paused, scanned the hall, and placed his hand on his chest. "I am not here as a politician." He began, his voice steady. "I am here as a man who has been touched by faith." People leaned forward unsettled. Faith in politics. It was not what anyone expected. Traoré's voice grew stronger. Many speak of power, of wealth, of strength. But true strength, true power is found in humility. Jesus taught us this. The hall grew still. No shuffling, no whispers. Even the clicking of cameras had stopped. Every eye was on him. Traoré was not reading from a script. His words flowed from somewhere deep inside. He told a story of a childhood moment when he first heard the name of Jesus, not from books, but from a tired village elder who whispered that faith was stronger than fear. He recalled nights when fear surrounded Burkina Faso. Yet he remembered those words, faith over fear. Mel Gibson's eyes widened. The words hit him like thunder. He had seen actors deliver powerful lines, but this was not acting. This was raw truth. Traoré's voice cracked slightly as he said, "Without Jesus, I would not stand before you today." His example reminds us that no man is above sacrifice. The hall trembled with emotion. Some wiped their eyes, others bowed their heads, and Mel Gibson's lips began to tremble. As Traoré spoke, a small moment happened that would later circle the world. Mel Gibson, the man known for strength and unshakable composure, raised his hand to his face. A tear slipped down his cheek. The cameras caught it. A Hollywood giant moved to tears by the words of a young African president. People gasped, not because Mel cried, but because the world suddenly felt united in a raw shared emotion. Traoré, unaware of the cameras, continued. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." We live in a world where peace is sold for profit, but peace is not for sale. It is a gift we must live no matter the cost. The hall shook with a round of quiet applause. Not the kind forced at political events, but the kind born from hearts touched. Mel tried to steady himself, but the more he listened, the more the tears flowed. For him, it was personal. For the audience, it was unforgettable. And for Traoré, it was only the beginning of a message that would stir the world for the next 7 days. The hall had grown heavy with silence. Outside, the night winds of Ouagadougou brushed against the windows, but inside, every soul was locked onto Traoré's words. For a brief second he paused. His eyes scanned the audience, and though hundreds sat before him, it felt as if he was speaking to each person one by one. A mother in the back clutched her baby tighter. A journalist lowered his pen, unable to keep writing. Even the translators who were supposed to interpret in real time hesitated, their voices breaking as they tried to carry his message across languages. Then softly, Traoré said, "We all live with battles no one else sees. But I tell you today, "There is no burden too heavy for the one who carried the cross." The words fell like drops of water on dry ground. People closed their eyes. Some shook their heads slowly, overwhelmed. Mel Gibson bowed forward, pressing both hands to his face. He was no longer an actor, no longer a man of fame. He was simply human, broken by truth. Something powerful was stirring, and everyone knew this night would not be forgotten. Traoré gripped the podium with both hands. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with conviction so deep that it shook the hall. "I have led soldiers. I have faced weapons. I have seen men fall at my side. But none of that compares to the strength I feel when I remember that Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. He, the greatest of all, chose to serve." The words hit like thunder. Leaders in suits shifted uncomfortably. They were not used to hearing humility spoken so boldly in a world of pride. Suddenly, an older man in the audience began sobbing openly. The sound echoed in the hall, raw and unrestrained. Instead of embarrassment, it triggered something, a ripple. Others began weeping quietly, shoulders shaking, tissues pressed to eyes. Mel Gibson, trying to steady his breath, whispered under his tears, This is truth." Traoré looked out, his eyes moist but steady. "My nation is not perfect. I am not perfect. But the one who forgives has given me courage. And I stand here today not ashamed of him." The hall erupted, not with applause, but with a deep, trembling silence that was louder than thunder. By the 6th minute of his speech, something unimaginable had happened. The event had stopped being political. It had become something sacred. Television crews who came expecting headlines about policies now found their lenses capturing tears, folded hands, and bowed heads. The live broadcast spread like wildfire across the world. In cafes, churches, and homes, people leaned over screens, captivated. Then Traoré spoke words no one anticipated. He leaned forward and said, "Even presidents kneel. Even kings bow before Jesus. We are all the same. Dust loved into life." Gasps filled the room. For a world built on division and pride, it was shocking to hear such humility from a head of state. Mel Gibson could no longer hide his sobs. His shoulders shook visibly, his face red and wet. Reporters tried to capture the moment, but their own eyes blurred with tears. A young student in the crowd whispered to her neighbor, "I will never forget this night." And at that instant, it became clear. This was not just a speech. It was history being written with words carved into hearts instead of paper. Outside the conference venue, hundreds of people stood by giant screens that broadcast the speech live. They had expected a political address, but what they received pierced their hearts. Many dropped to their knees right there on the street. Some prayed. Some simply cried, unable to explain what they were feeling. Across the ocean, the footage hit social media in real time. Hashtags exploded. People who had never even heard of Burkina Faso were suddenly repeating Traoré's words. Even presidents kneel. In Los Angeles, a church had paused its evening choir practice. The pastor rolled in a television and said, "Watch this." The choir members, still holding their hymn books, began sobbing as they listened. And back in the hall, Mel Gibson, his face wet with tears, whispered to the man beside him, "This is no speech. This is a calling." The cameras caught it. The moment spread like fire. The atmosphere was no longer confined to four walls. It was as if the entire world was sitting in that hall, holding its breath. As Traoré continued, a soldier standing guard near the entrance suddenly stepped forward. His uniform was crisp, his face stern, but his eyes were wet. Breaking protocol, he raised his hand and asked to speak. The room froze. "Mr. President," the soldier's voice cracked, "I have carried weapons all my life. I have lost brothers in battle. I thought strength was only in the gun I held. But tonight I realize I was wrong." True strength is in forgiveness, in faith, in love. Please pray for me. Gasps filled the air. Journalists dropped their pens. The hall had seen interruptions before, but never like this. Traoré walked away from the podium, approached the soldier, and placed a hand on his shoulder. He didn't hesitate. "My brother," he said softly, "Jesus already prayed for you the day he gave his life. You are forgiven." The soldier collapsed to his knees, weeping uncontrollably. Cameras caught the moment. A head of state kneeling beside a broken soldier. Mel Gibson covered his mouth with his hand, unable to contain the sobs shaking his chest. The world was seeing what it had forgotten: humility in power. By now, the hall was no longer in order. People were standing, crying, reaching for one another. Leaders who once never showed weakness now sat with bowed heads, trembling. Then, Traoré did something no one expected. He stepped down completely from the stage and walked into the crowd. He moved slowly, touching shoulders, lifting faces strewn with tears. He was no longer president. He was simply a man carrying a message bigger than himself. He stopped in front of Mel Gibson. The actor looked up, his eyes red, his body trembling. For years, he had carried the weight of ridicule for his outspoken faith. Now here he was, broken before the words of a leader half his age. Traoré looked him in the eye and said gently, "Brother, your tears are not weakness. They are strength. They are truth." Mel tried to answer, but only sobs came out. The camera zoomed in, and the image flashed around the world. A president comforting a crying Hollywood legend. It was the breaking point. The hall erupted, not with applause, but with uncontrollable weeping. The kind of weeping that heals. That as the images of the night spread online, world leaders began reacting. Some stayed silent, cautious of mixing faith with politics, but others privately admitted they had been moved to tears watching the live stream. In a small hospital room in Paris, a dying woman clutched her phone. She had battled illness for years, her hope nearly gone. But when she heard Traoré's voice declare, "Even kings bow before Jesus," she whispered to her nurse, "If he can stand with such faith, then I will hold on too." Her tears stained her pillow, but for the first time in years, they were tears of hope. Meanwhile, the clip of Mel Gibson crying had gone viral. Some mocked, but most were stunned. Headlines read, "Hollywood legend brought to tears by African leader's faith." Inside the hall, Traoré raised his hand, not to silence the people, but to steady them. His eyes were filled with fire, yet softened with compassion. "I did not come here to change the world with weapons or speeches," he said slowly. "I came to remind you that the greatest power is love." Those words echoed far beyond the hall into homes and hearts worldwide. After the speech paused for a brief moment, Mel Gibson stood. The hall gasped. This was not part of the program. His voice cracked as he said, "Mr. President, you reminded me of something I forgot. That faith is not a film, not a performance. It is life itself." He stumbled forward, his hands trembling. Traoré didn't wait. He met him halfway, embracing him like a brother. The crowd erupted, many crying uncontrollably at the sight. For Mel, the embrace was more than comfort. It was healing. He had faced years of judgment, loneliness, and misunderstanding. But here, in the arms of a young African president, he felt the weight lift. Traoré whispered, though the microphone still caught it, "You are not alone. The world needs your tears because they speak truth." The hall wept as one. Even hardened security men turned away, hiding their faces. This was not a political event anymore. It had become a sanctuary. The image of Traoré holding Gibson spread instantly across continents. People who never prayed before whispered their first prayers in years. Something holy had been stirred. The next morning, as dawn broke over Ouagadougou, the world was already buzzing. News channels replayed the event non-stop. People debated, cried, and prayed. But behind the scenes, a letter arrived at the presidential residence. It was handwritten, trembling with emotion. The letter came from an American mother who had lost her son in a school shooting. "I did not know who you were before yesterday," she wrote. "But when I heard you speak about Jesus carrying burdens, I broke down. I realized I had been carrying my grief alone. Your words gave me courage to forgive. Thank you for reminding me that my boy is safe in God's arms." Traoré read the letter aloud to his staff. For a moment, none of them could speak. The silence was thick with emotion. He finally said, "This is why I spoke. Not for applause, not for politics, but for souls like hers." That day, more letters and messages flooded in from every corner of the globe. Soldiers, widows, orphans, even celebrities, all writing the same thing. "Your words gave me hope." The week was only beginning, but the world was already trembling. On the third day after the speech, a video surfaced online. It showed a little boy in Burkina Faso, no older than 10, standing barefoot in a dusty courtyard. He held a cracked piece of chalk and wrote on the wall, "Even presidents kneel." The clip went viral within hours. People were stunned that a child had grasped so deeply what many adults were still processing. Journalists rushed to find him. His mother explained with tears streaming down her cheeks, "My son has not spoken since his father died last year." But after hearing President Traoré's words on the radio, he picked up the chalk and wrote this. The world wept again. News anchors couldn't hold back their tears as they replayed the child's shaky handwriting on the wall. When the video reached Traoré, he sat silently for a long time. Then he whispered, "Even children understand when truth speaks. This is no longer my voice. It is God's voice echoing." And from that moment, the child's chalk-written words became a symbol across continents, painted on banners, posted on walls, and held up in protests and vigils worldwide. But not everyone welcomed the wave of emotion. By the fourth day, critics began to stir. Some leaders accused Traoré of mixing religion with politics. Commentators scoffed, calling it a performance meant to impress. Hollywood, one international journalist, even challenged him directly in a press briefing. "Mr. President, do you not fear that your words will divide nations? Shouldn't faith remain private?" The room tensed, cameras zoomed in. This was the moment they thought Traoré might retreat. But his reply was calm, steady, and unwavering. "When a house is burning, you do not whisper to the family inside. You shout so they can run to safety. My words are not to divide. They are to save. And if I must be criticized for reminding the world of love and humility, then I accept it with joy." The hall broke into applause. Even some critics lowered their eyes in shame. Mel Gibson, watching nearby, whispered to himself, "This man is fearless because his heart is anchored." The challenge had only strengthened the fire. That same evening, something extraordinary happened. Without being planned, crowds began gathering across Burkina Faso. In villages and cities alike, people carried candles, sang hymns, and prayed in the open streets. It was not organized by churches or officials. It was born from the people themselves. Men, women, and children lifted their voices, repeating the words they had heard. Even kings bow. Across the globe, similar gatherings began. In Brazil, worshippers filled beaches with candles. In South Korea, churches stayed open all night. In New York, Times Square lit up with thousands kneeling together as the giant screens replayed Traoré's speech. From his residence, Traoré stood at the window, watching thousands flood the streets of Ouagadougou with candlelight. His eyes glistened as he whispered to his aide, "This is not about me. This is about him." Mel Gibson, still in Burkina Faso, joined the crowd silently carrying a candle. He was just another soul among thousands. his tears blending with theirs. That night, faith transcended borders. By the sixth day, the world was on edge. Felt some celebrated Traoré's message of humility and faith, while others tried to discredit him. News debates filled screens. Protests rose in some cities, but the overwhelming majority of voices were united in tears and prayer. That night in Ouagadougou, the skies darkened with a heavy storm. Thunder rolled, rain poured endlessly, and still, people gathered outside, soaked but unshaken. They lit candles that flickered against the wind, refusing to let the light go out. Inside his residence, Traoré sat quietly with Mel Gibson. The storm rattled the windows, but both men sat in silence, their hands clasped in prayer. Mel finally whispered, "Do you see what is happening? This is more than politics. This is a revival." Traoré opened his eyes and said softly, "If the storm outside cannot silence them, then nothing will. Tomorrow will be the seventh day, and we will see what God has prepared." The storm raged on, but the people sang louder, their voices echoing like thunder through the night. Morning broke with golden light piercing through the clouds. It was the seventh day since Traoré's unforgettable speech. Crowds filled the streets of Ouagadougou, carrying banners that read, "Even kings bow." Unexpectedly, churches of every denomination opened their doors at once. Mosques too called for peace, acknowledging the message of humility. Across the world, from Lagos to London, from São Paulo to Seoul, people gathered in unity. Screens replayed Traoré's words as if they were scripture. In the capital square, Traoré stepped forward again, but this time with no podium, no microphone. He simply stood among the people as one of them. He raised his voice, steady and unbroken. "If this week has taught us anything, it is this. Power fades, wealth disappears, but love remains. Let us not forget. Let us walk humbly. Let us live as servants, not masters." The crowd roared with tears and applause. Mel Gibson, standing in the front row, lifted his hands to the sky, overwhelmed. For one sacred moment, the city felt like holy ground. As the sun set on the seventh day, thousands lit candles across Burkina Faso. From the air, the city glowed like a sea of stars. Around the world, people did the same, joining in one final act of unity. Mel Gibson turned to Traoré with tears still in his eyes. "Your words will echo for generations. You did not just speak to Burkina Faso. You spoke to humanity." Traoré shook his head gently. "It was never me. It was him. I am just a voice." The cameras captured the moment. A president holding a candle standing not above the people but among them. It became the image of the century. And as chants of "Even kings bow" filled the air, something undeniable had happened. A movement was born carried by tears, faith, and humility. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if you felt the tears and the hope rising inside you, I want you to pause and do 3 simple things. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below sharing how this story moved you. Your comments will not just be words. They will be part of this movement of love and humility. Let the world hear your